welcome everybody to the Huddle, KGUN's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined as always by Pat Parris. Pat, good afternoon on this Arizona Football Media Day.
Yeah, we're in the red and blue. It's Arizona Football Media Day, getting ready for football. One of our favorite times of the year as we get going again after a slow summer, Jason.
We're going to hear from new offensive coordinator Seth Doege, but first, Pat, we're going to start with our Huddle poll question. And it's got the theme of Arizona football, certainly, and it has to do with Noah Fifita. Will he regain his 2023 form? 3 choices. Yes, with Seth Doege and a healthier offensive line and a deeper one. No, because he's lost his best bud T-Mac, Titterell McMillan, to the NFL. Or C, not sure. There's a lot of many moving pieces here. I think the jury, give me a few games to decide. So you can vote on X or on our KGUN 9 website. Pat, I voted C. Not sure. But I'm thinking you voted A or C, leaning A.
I did vote A.
Yeah.
Although there are parts of the other two that obviously you're concerned about. 3 new coordinators. So all 3 of the coordinators are new. 54 newcomers. So that takes up your C part. And then, of course, he doesn't have T-Mac. He doesn't have Titterell McMillan off to the NFL. And the Carolina Panthers. I actually think that Noah Fifita is still Noah Fifita, and I think if you give him time, which he ran out of time often last year, then he can be back to that form that we saw in 2023. So I'm hopeful that with this new offensive coordinator and a healthy offensive line, he'll be back to being one of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12.
Seth Doege was brought in as offensive coordinator specifically for Noah Fifita. He is a former quarterback himself, and a good one at that. And today during Media Day, Pat, I was able to chat a little bit with Seth Doege, Arizona football new offensive coordinator, and we're going to play that and then come back at the end and chat about it. But here is me earlier today with a couple hours ago with new Arizona football coordinator, offensive coordinator Seth Doege.
Attack. We're going to be explosive. We're going to play fast. Our guys are going to have a ton of fun. But we're going to do, at the end of the day, we're going to do whatever it takes to win. If that means like putting it on the ground, like and diving into the run game, and we're going to dive into the run game. If that means throwing it over their head, we're going to throw it over their head. If that means playing ball control, we're going to play ball control. But we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. We play with a lot of tempo, and it's going to be an attacking style of offense, like I said. But at the end of the day, if we need to slow it down to win a game, we're going to slow it down to win a game.
How has your relationship with Noah Fifita grown over the last several months?
It's the tightest relationship that I've had since I've coached. I consider Noah almost like a little brother now. I consider myself a mentor for him, but he's so easy to get along with because all he wants to do is do it the right way. But we've gotten to a part of our relationship where he can question why, and I can explain why. And if he still doesn't agree, we can sit there and have a conversation on what the best way is for him. And I don't have enough pride. I don't have too much pride. I have pride. I have an ego, but not to an expense of like what's going to hurt Noah. My thought process is like, what can I do to make sure that he's the most confident, well-prepared, and explosive athlete he can possibly be.
How does being a former quarterback help you help him?
I think it's huge. I'm not saying that you have to play quarterback to be offensive coordinator, to be a quarterback coach, but I do think it helps because you've been under fire. You know what it is when the bullets are flying at you. You know when the pocket collapse, what that feels like. You know when you're not playing well, what that pressure feels like. You know when you lose, what that feels like. But you also know the highs of it. You know when you win, when you're not supposed to, when you're on a hot streak, and everybody in the city and the country is pushing your name, whether it be for the Heisman, for whatever it is. You're getting all this pub. So you know what it is going through all the highs and lows of playing quarterback, which, like I said, if you can put your pride and your ego aside and walk him through some areas that he needs help on, then he becomes a better quarterback for you and your team. And I think that's where we are as in my mind. I know his relationship was it's clicking, and I feel really good about it.
What have you learned about him? I think we all know he's a great guy who works pretty hard. But what about on the field? What has surprised you about maybe his skill set since taking over the job?
I didn't know how elite he was at throwing on the run. He can really create outside the pocket. He's very accurate. If you watch some of the like the Utah game, some of the games that they pulled some upset, he made some really, really impressive throws outside the pocket. And you can't coach that. That's really hard to coach. The fundamentals of throwing on the run obviously are just like anything else. Like you're coaching a drop and the mechanics of actually throwing the football. There's mechanics to throwing on the run. But being able to feel and see that rhythm and still throw an accurate football 40 to 50 yards down the field, while 200-300-pounder guys, 300-pounders are chasing you, and still getting hit and delivering. I mean, that's just special. And it's really hard to find. I think he's really elite at that.
When it comes to training camp, some coaches are looking for guys they can win with. Some coaches are looking for guys who are going to be good teammates. What are you looking for?
A combination. I think the question that I ask myself and I ask the offensive staff to ask is, if something's brought up, does it help us win and does it make us better? If the answer is yes, then like we're probably onto something. But if the answer is no, then we're wasting our time. Okay, so the first question, does it help us win? When you evaluate, I think the way Coach Brennan approaches and attacks his organization is with authentic development of relationships and getting to know his staff, his players. But at the same time, you can't let that get in the way of like hard decisions. And sometimes hard decisions are playing the best player.
What's the strangest way your name has ever been pronounced?
Doege, probably. That's the one that comes to mind. And I got a couple stories for you. First of all, when they made that video, I really didn't know what they were going for, right? They just told me, hey, we're going to make a video for you, blah, blah, blah. So I show up, I do my thing. Well, obviously I was getting some Heisman hype. So playing well, get some Heisman hype. So they make the story, or they make the video. The video's sweet, right? They did a great job. But I probably had the biggest 4 to 6-year-old little girl fan base in the world after that, which was awesome. But the other story is my name is it's almost impossible to get it right. If you know it. Yeah, if you know it, maybe. And obviously there's some German Dutch to it. If you ask my grandma, like, why is there no like AY, or where is the A come from? And then she has this book of all these little dots and different ways to spell it, and she explains it a little bit. But when I was younger, a telemarketer would call the house, and my dad, who's a coach, and he's a pretty disciplined, like old school, like hard-nosed defensive coordinator coach. So like, think of like Bud Kilmer, Varsity Blues, right? Like this dude, like you don't wear your hat backwards, your shirt better be tucked in, there's no earrings, blah, blah, blah. So a telemarketer would call the house, he would answer it, and they would say, is Randy Doege there? And he would scream into the phone, it's Doege, and hang it up. And
how much do you correct people?
I don't correct. I'm just like, hey, by the way, if it's needed, I'll correct you. If not, then whatever. And I usually say, like, listen, don't feel bad, like nobody gets it, right? And but I remember thinking as a little kid, like, Dad, why do you get so mad? Nobody's ever gonna get it. Just correct them and be like, okay, we're good. Like, it's not a big. Nobody's trying to disrespect us by not getting our name right. But that's just who he was. It was funny.
All right, that's offensive coordinator Seth Doege. I'm going to clarify, Pat, for you, or you may not need it, but many might. What he was talking about there a little bit. So in 2012, he was getting some Heisman hype, as he says, a quarterback at, was it Texas Tech or Texas A&M?
Texas Tech.
Okay.
Yep.
And the hit song in the summer of 2012 was a song called "Call Me Maybe." Do you remember that song at all, by chance?
I have a daughter who was at that time was the age that song was targeted at. So yes, I remember that song.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they did a song called "Call Me Doege."
Yeah.
And if you're so inclined, I'm sure it's somewhere on YouTube or the interwebs where you can find it. So that's what he was talking about with the video that they made for him with "Call Me Doege." But Pat, what are some of your thoughts on the interview and what he's going to bring to Arizona football?
There's a lot we can talk about. My first thought is this guy knows what he's talking about. He did it at Marshall last year as offensive coordinator. They were one of the top passing offenses in all of football, and they also had a really good running game. So he's not just blowing smoke there when he says we're going to pass the ball, but if we need to, we can slow it down and we can run the ball. He did it. And my second immediate thought was, this guy's not going to be here long. I think that guy has a real big future in football, and I think the Wildcats are lucky they have him, and maybe just be for 1 year. We'll see, maybe 2.
He was brought in, if I'm not mistaken, Pat, specifically for Noah Fifita.
In a way, yeah.
To help retain Fifita, okay, and B, as the person who would be the best for him, a former quarterback, someone who played college football at a Power 4 conference, and the person who he would most relate to. And it sounds like their relationship is pretty strong.
It sounds like it's really strong. Tightest relationship ever, he said, that he's had with the quarterback.
Yeah.
I think what this goes back to, Jason, is, and we're not we talked about it last year. We talked about it even in this off season before. The Brent Brennan's, putting the staff together was late last year. They got started late. And so he brought in a bunch of old school guys, and we all appreciated them, and we all know that their reputation was solid. But it was just kind of, in a way, it was old school, and they didn't have time to find the Seth Doeges or even court them to come, because they were already signed up. Seth Doege was already well entrenched at Marshall. So it was great to see Brent Brennan say, okay, we've got to redo this. We've got time now. So as soon as the offseason started, after the season was over, the 4-8 season that was not good, they were able to find guys like Seth Doege and then woo them and say, you've got a player here. And it just seemed like the right fit. And I that's why I have, after we probably overrated how good this team would be last year because they were so good the year before, now I have a sense of they can be pretty good this year. They're not going to be great, but they can be pretty good this year because I think they have the right coordinators in place. And I think for Noah Fifita's development, they have the right quarterback coach / offensive coordinator with Doege.
When I talked to Fifita today, he said the biggest change of losing T-Mac would actually be T-Mac off the field because they're best buds. And,
right.
That's who he talks to and all that. But it's going to be interesting because you make the comment, well, you can't replace T-Mac with one guy. So they did it with 3 or 4. Actually, they got 3 or 4 really good. They got 3 or 4 good wide receivers.
Right.
This is not a bad wide receiver room. Chris Hunter came on strong last year. Wish he'd come on strong earlier in the year.
Right.
But he came on strong last year. Chris Hudson, who played at Washington State and Oregon, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that guy's no slouch. They got Trey Spivey from Kansas State. And the guy from the smaller school, Nunu Watley is his name. Fifita's raving about him, about how fast he is.
Yep.
So it seems like they've got multiple weapons, and you don't have, and Fifita's going to be happy to throw to anybody. Not that he wasn't before, but it was almost kind of like, where's my guy and where's T-Mac? And, this is going to be a much different dynamic passing the football with multiple wide receivers, not to mention the tight ends with Olsen and who knows if Kean Burnett's ever going to, come through. But
I
it's
still
a
have hope.
Situation, Pat.
I still have hope for Kean Burnett. I think that he was humbled and realized that he should have been here all along. He never should have kind of tested the waters during the spring. But I think I still think he can be a productive member of that tight end crew. I think when you're going to miss
Olsen's the head on the depth chart right now.
Yes, I understand that, but you know how they use multiple tight end. I mean, they'll run them in and out during different drives. I really think that the time you're going to miss T-Mac is when you have those clutch situations where other guys are covered and you just throw it to T-Mac because he's bigger than everybody else, and that's going to be missed. But you can get around that in a lot of ways, and one is running the ball better. Let's not forget that that's part of the equation too. And if you have a more balanced offense and you actually can count on a run game, that opens up your passing game a little bit more. And I think that's it. You've got to find 2 or 3 guys that elevate their game even more than you're seeing at this point. And maybe there'll be a surprise. Maybe there's another All-American or at least all-conference kind of wide receiver, not a T-Mac, not a top 10 draft pick. I'm not saying that, but maybe there's another guy in there that's going to surprise you.
Yeah. And on the defensive side of the ball, you talk about the 3 new coordinators. Danny Gonzalez is the defensive coordinator. and he's very high on what his defense is going to do. I asked him, point blank, I said, what about size? Is there enough size on this defense? And he went and listed all the guys and all the weights, and he said it's absolutely not an issue. So that made me feel a little bit better about the defense. Size hasn't always been there with this program, Pat, and it was a real problem early in Fish's tenure that he fixed. And I remember even Rich Rod talking about, the one guy they had who was 6'8", 320, and he wanted him to get off the bus first for the intimidation factor, right? Because they didn't have that many guys who were that big. It's never really been a big program except for that 2023 season. That made me feel a little bit better about the defense.
Yeah, and I think it's always been tough to recruit size defensively in places like Tucson, Arizona, for whatever reason. It's hard to get guys like that to come here. They all want to play for an SEC school or a Big Ten school. But I really think that, they're on the right track here. And I think something we touched on last year, and it was part of that, just getting the staff put together in the nick of time to have spring practices and then go on to fall camp.
Pat, I'm going to interrupt you. I don't think it was a situation of putting the staff together, because he got his guys. I think the comment that he made at Big 12 Media Day, which was he was kissing players' butt in order to get them to stay, and instead of, doing sometimes what you have to do and getting the right players and maybe being a little bit more disciplined, I think that was more the issue than the time to pick the staff. I think maybe the actual picking of the staff could have been different. I'm
going to disagree a little bit, Jason, in the sense that when he took over the program, a lot of the guys, like, as I mentioned, Seth Doege, had already committed and were already tied up to programs. So it wasn't as big a list as you would like to have had.
Okay.
Did they get guys that we wanted? Probably. I mean, they got, as we said, all these guys had had great connections to the University of Arizona, and we appreciated all of them. Actually, it was going to be about strength and conditioning. And, there was some question about strength and conditioning last year, which is totally unfair, because the strength and conditioning guys had just gotten here. They had just started to build a program the way that Brent Brennan, because don't forget, the head coach still oversees the strength and conditioning part of it. And I think another year into that, and you're going to see bigger, stronger, faster guy. I think that's the progression of having a head coach be there for more than just 1 year. You've got it. Everything has to kind of come together, and sometimes it takes a little while. And I just don't think they had the time last year to get a whole lot done. I think they, and that's why they're going to be judged more this year. We were critical of a lot of things that they did wrong last year, but we also knew it was year number one. So we step back now and we say, okay, you kind of remade your coordinators, your three coordinators. You've added 54 players. Now you're going to be judged, and it's going to be a lot more critical, the judging that most people will have for this 2025 team than we had for the 2024 team.
The effort's certainly there. I mean, when Brennan at the end of last year talked about how he was fired up to fix this, he has backed that up. There has been a lot of, changes on the staff, of course, and they talked about the 54 new players and the different schemes. And I do think he was a little embarrassed by the ASU game.
I think so too,
as he should have been. Okay, and that was a really good ASU team that blew him out.
Turns out they were, yeah.
That was a really good team, and a really good running back.
And they lost 7 of their last 8 games. I mean, think of that. If you don't have Houston in the middle of that 8-game streak, you'd lose 8 out of 8. We watched other teams get better. We watched ASU get better. We watched BYU get better.
Arizona got decimated with injuries.
Well, they got decimated with injuries, and they got worse. I mean, that's just how it happened. So, they'll be better prepared. They'll be strong, as I said, stronger, faster. They should be more disciplined in a lot of ways, I think, on both sides of the ball. Better schemes on both sides of the ball. More. This is 2025, and you can't, as much as we loved the 1980s and 1990s for Arizona football, especially the 1990s, this isn't 1990 anymore. The football's evolved, and you've got to evolve with it. And I think this team's going to be playing 2025 football, the brand that needs to be played in order to be competitive.
All right, let's finish it up now with our Huddle poll question and see the results. Has to do with Arizona quarterback Noah Fifita. Do you think he's going to regain that 2023 form this season? We got 60% saying yes because of Seth Doege and the healthier offensive line. 13% saying no because he lost his best bud T-Mac, and 20, about a quarter saying not sure with all the new pieces. These polls tend to lead heavy on the positive for Arizona, so I'm not surprised. Like I said, I did C, Pat, you did A, and
I'll tell you what, though,
I do
Jason,
think he's going to be better than he was last year. 2023 was a special year, and that's tough, but we'll know it from the eye test.
Yeah, that's it. The eye test will show you, but from the conversation, that short conversation, 6 minutes or whatever it was that you had with Seth Doege, you can see why you could be a believer pretty quick. I mean, he's a guy that he can back it up with what he did as a star player at Texas Tech, and what he's done as a coordinator at Marshall, and a couple other stops along the way before that. But he talks a good game. I mean, I was impressed. I was fired up by him, and for him to say the things.
You'll be fired up by Danny Gonzalez too.
Yeah, I'm sure I will be. I think that what he had to say about his relationship with Noah Fifita was very positive to me, and it says a lot when a guy like Noah Fifita, who could have gone anywhere the last 2 years, he could have gone anywhere, but he's decided to stay.
All right, this has been the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly sports streaming talk show, talking Arizona football here on Media Day, and glad we got that fresh content in with Seth Doege. And thanks everybody for voting and watching. We really appreciate it. And like we say all summer, we do 40 Tuesdays a year. So not sure we're going to be next Tuesday, but we might. And but if we're not, we'll be back the following Tuesday. And we do the skips in the summer when there's not as much going on. Right. We don't skip during the fall. We're going to talk about the Arizona football and the Arizona basketball games. All right, for Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.